Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, April 14th, 2025. This is a meeting of the Town of Warren Planning Commission. This meeting is, in particular, is a public hearing on the revised updated land use and development regulations for the Town of Warren. Let's see. We're really here to take public comment. I don't see many members of the public here or any members of the public here. It may be simply because, this is the land use development regs have been in progress for roughly 6 years.
Just heard somebody.
Adam.
Oh, Adam.
I did prepare before we, in the lieu of public comment, I thought maybe since I put together a little PowerPoint, and since the meeting's being recorded, if Adam could get that little PowerPoint loaded up for Ruth.
Okay, if you want to, it's in, okay, if you,
What are you looking
well,
to
I was,
present it on Zoom?
yes,
Is that what you're trying to
yes,
do?
and it's, you need to get down here, because it's in Google, and it's email. And it's right below here. There it is.
Okay, so there's that. So let's download it or something, and then open it. And then when we open it, working on it. When we open this, starting. Okay, we're in.
Okay.
Does everyone on Zoom see that, or do I have to do share screen?
And Sharon, Sharon Murray, our consultant, is here. So if I get something wrong, Sharon, please correct me afterwards.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do fine.
Midstream is fine too. If we, are you good at? Are you good at?
I think so.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Oh my God, what happened?
What happened?
Why am I responsible for this again?
The youngest. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
cool.
You're the vice chair. That's
You're
why.
young and cool looking.
There we go.
Thanks. Okay.
Whoa,
So
yeah.
could you advance the next slide, please, Adam?
Yes.
Can we get rid of the screen share thing? Or do we need to?
No, I have, it needs
Okay.
to say that.
Okay, all right.
Okay, here we are.
Ooh, beautiful. Do you make that?
Shared window is closed.
No, but I like it.
Okay, guys, bear with me. We're
Is
almost
that a
here.
light fixture or sculpture or what?
I've been doing a little sculpting. Yeah, it's very cool.
Looks like a silk, something that was to be put on a dress.
Sign in to get started.
We
Do
can
you have
leave
an
that.
account? I can't do it without.
I
Okay.
thought you
Yeah.
just had it.
Maybe you
Here,
just do it
how
on
about
your
this?
computer and put it at the end of the table.
Put
and we
it
can all
on
watch
Google
it.
Drive.
Sure. Or I can, you know what? I can
You had
just,
it on
I
there,
can just
but-
talk through it.
Yeah, but
While you're working on it, Adam, I'll just start.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah, yeah,
start
go ahead.
talking. So the first slide is really our, what I would call legal authority requirements and limits. And this is probably just a good thing for PC members to hear anyway. Title 24 of the Vermont statutes, section 4325, sets out the duties and powers of Vermont planning commissions, including preparing a town plan and zoning bylaws. A town plan is an overall, and this is right out of statute and some case law, a town plan is an overall guide for the municipality's development stated in broad general terms. Zoning ordinances, by contrast, are tools for implementing a valid town plan and must reflect the plan, are in much greater detail. Zoning bylaws under Vermont statute govern the use of land and the placement, spacing, and size of structures and other factors specified in the bylaws related to public health, safety, or welfare. As we know, the state imposes many requirements on town zoning. For example, the state statute now says, and this is a recent addition, I believe, Sharon can confirm, in any, and this is one of many examples, in any area served by a municipal sewer and water infrastructure that allows residential development, bylaws shall establish lot and building dimensional standards that allow 5 or more dwelling units per acre for each allowed residential use. Density and minimum lot standards for multi-unit dwellings shall not be more restrictive than those required for single-family dwellings, which is just an example of the way the state, for in this case, to encourage housing, tells towns in your zoning bylaws, if where they want development to occur. State statute sets out what type of zoning and regulations are allowable, and sets out objectives for downtowns, village centers, and growth centers, such as, for example, to create a compact settlement oriented towards pedestrian activity, and to provide for a variety of housing types, jobs, shopping, services, and public facilities with residences, shops, workplaces, and public buildings interwoven with the district. Which is all, these are just examples of how the state tells us what has to go in our zoning bylaws. And a lot of that is driven, a lot of our zoning bylaws are driven by state requirements. State statute also provides the process for adoption and amendment of bylaws, which we are in the middle of. Namely, the land use and development regs shall be prepared by the PC for purposes of implementing the town plan. The planning commission shall hold at least one public hearing after public notice. That is what this is today. And not less than 15 nor more than 20 days after a proposed bylaw amendment or repeal is submitted to the select board. In our case, the legislative body, the select board, shall hold the first of one or more public hearings after public notice. So let's turn again, for the purposes of review, to our current land use and development regs. They were initially adopted in March 2001, as we know, and were amended again in 2001, 2002, 2006, and 2008.
2012.
And 2012, which is not on our website. As Sharon's report as the PC report, which Sharon helps us draft, notes, they are dated and no longer reflect increasing state requirements around numerous areas. The ones that come to mind immediately: stormwater, housing, flooding, farm businesses, the list goes on. And they also need to be updated to reflect community priorities and the new town plan. And just want to quickly go over the timeline. So as we just said, our current looters originally adopted 2001. 2019, as everyone knows, we did a new town plan, a completely revised town plan. As our report notes, the town plan recognized that it was time for a comprehensive review and amendment of the looters. And probably back in 2019, we got started with the assistance of PlaceSense, a consultant. It may have been 2020, but likely 2019 is when we first picked up the job of drafting these new looters. The town plan, again, as our report says, identified a need to realign the looters with the town's planning policies and to address inconsistencies resulting from the many changes that have been made to state statutes and programs. There was also a commitment from the PC to improve the clarity of the looters and the town's development and review process. More on the timeline from 20 to 22, as many of us know, the PC worked with PlaceSense to review the current regulations, solicit community input, and prepare an initial draft of the proposed regulations zoning maps, which were presented at an initial public hearing in March of 2022. The draft looters were then forwarded to the select board for consideration. In April of 2023, the looters ultimately were rejected, or the draft looters were rejected by the select board at that time, and the select board began its own process of reviewing the document. To the best of my recall, in spring, from approximately spring to fall of 2024, a subcommittee of select board and PC members met to go over the select board comments, because the select board, which is to say, I probably skipped a step, I think we all know this, the select board the select board dove deeply into the looters and wanted, and really did the hard work of providing comments on the looters for us to work with. And so again, spring to probably fall of 24, the subcommittee of the select board and PC members, some of whom were in this room, met to go over the select board comments on the draft looters. We met weekly and with the assistance of consultant Sharon Murray, who's on the call, completed that work. Approximately this winter, the revised draft looters were returned to the PC to restart the formal process of adoption. And you know, a description of the substantive policy and procedural changes are described in the report, in the PC report. That's the substance of my comments and slideshow. So I guess the next step is to see if there's do we have any public comment? Are there any members there are no members of the public present?
Cricket.
I don't see.
Can we pull up Can we pull this? I don't know why we're not getting it on here.
Wait, have we lost
Let's get out of PowerPoint and go back to the regular screen.
How do
We're not in PowerPoint. We're just on.
should I just close this down? over
Yeah,
here?
this is just the email open. Maybe if you hit stop share on Zoom, maybe that will take us back. Stop share. Oh no. Oh, the red
Oh.
thing right
Oh,
there.
Sorry.
Oh.
Okay.
I see people. I see
Right
people
there.
on the screen. Okay. How do we get them back up on the big screen?
I don't know.
We don't know.
How do
Okay.
you put stuff on the screen, Ruth?
I have no idea. That's why I asked you to do it, because I thought you would know.
Long way to go. Look what we got. We got.
You just want to share it?
Here we go. Bring
Is
the
it with
IT.
Zoom?
Bring in the IT.
There's a share. You have to hover over the get the Zoom.
It's not about sharing. It's about getting what's on the TV on the computer screen to get on the TV screen.
Yeah, that's you have to share it. Oh, I see what you're saying. It's not even the.
See, that's
Is
not
it
even
operating
showing.
as a second display for this?
Can you
Yeah.
drag
Got
it
it.
over in there? We're in. We've hacked into the mainframe.
Is this
Thanks,
a
Macon.
display? Is
See,
that
why don't we
what
have
it is?
Macon do it from the beginning?
Yeah, this isn't showing anybody else on this.
Okay. It does not look like there are any members of the public here.
Short meeting tonight.
So I guess with Sharon here, first of all, I'd like to say hello and thank you, Sharon. In terms of process, with no members of the public here commenting, what are your thoughts on what are your thoughts on proceeding?
We can vote can't we just vote to accept this and send it on to the select board?
You can,
second
yeah. I would just note in reviewing for today, there are some it's a draft and the substance is good. There's still some formatting and some typos I found and things like that. But if you guys do have any changes and talking to Ruth, there's a couple of things on the zoning maps that still need to be
If we
done.
can't stand before we pass. it on to the
If there's
select board.
time, some minor boundary adjustments on that you can vote to send it on to the select board and we can make those edits prior to the select board's hearing. Just to clean it up a little bit and make sure the zoning map is what was intended.
Can I, before we do that, there's one issue I'd like to talk probably with Sharon and Camilla, which is when I was going over the timeline, I
Mhm.
noted that this was probably approximately the same season that we passed the draft looters over to the select board. And it was noted by some members of the real estate community that this made permitting, this made the construction season difficult. I don't know if that's a concern. I don't know how much of a valid concern that is, or perhaps that was just something that came up that was.
Yeah, I mean,
You
it's
were
still the
part of
same
that
concern.
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no. there's two things. Number one, it's, if people will accept, because we had so many different, so many different people, a couple of attorneys who were saying, this is how it's supposed to be, this is how it's supposed to be when you're in that intermediate period. Because once the select board, and Sharon, you still with me? Oh,
Yep, I'm still, and you're right, yeah. What,
all right. It's just you're not here on this part. Um,
I can see Sharon clearly.
talk to her.
Yeah, talk to her.
Okay, all right. Um, once the select board warns their public hearing,
mhm,
that starts the time period during which, if anybody comes in for either a zoning permit, conditional use that has to go to the DRB, subdivision request, whatever, new application, that my understanding from Brandy was, to make it really simple, is either, you know, John Doe who comes in needs a conditional use for steep slopes to do his house, to build his house or build a garage, has to
mhm.
go to the DRB, that the standards for that conditional use review, it has to meet both our current ones and the proposed ones. They both
Yeah.
have to be. Or,
The regs go into effect in a sense along with your current regs, and you're right. And I'll check to see if the guidance on that's changed because it has been confusing for folks. But
because
I think technically you're right.
a no, or if somebody maybe doesn't fit the standards of the ones, our old ones, but does meet the standards of the new ones because of the change,
Mhm.
that they will not be denied. They will have to be semi-denied without prejudice. In other words, they can come back
Right.
if it's a, you know, a mix of a yes and a no.
That was my understanding.
Okay, well, for some reason or other people felt that it was not as clear and that people didn't feel comfortable because they didn't know what they were gonna get. And if they got a yes on this, they might end up getting a no later on. And so, and anyways,
I mean, I guess,
however.
you know, knowing that the construction season is, you know,
Right.
first of all, I mean, you know, we have been working on these for 6 years. So I think people do have had,
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to argue they haven't had notice. But nor do we want to put the select board in an impossible position when we turn over the looters to them. So I guess I just want to make sure this timing is not, if we were to pass this on to the select board. I mean, in some ways, I think we're never out of construction season.
That's right.
Construction is always
That's
happening.
totally
Right.
That's what I
Yeah.
was gonna say.
And there's two other things, and one is that, and this is a question for you, Sharon, and that is the fact that it can be, if things are timed correctly, if they can be somewhat condensed where it's not totally onerous, it's not like there's been a flood of stuff coming in like there was 2 and 3 years ago.
Mhm.
You could do a moratorium so people know that for now, I can't do it. Towns have done that, from what I understand. But if we start, you've got your 15-day notice to the select board. And if the select board at that time, after their public hearing, ideally, I know this is ideally, adopts it, there's a 21-day appeal period. Now, my question to you is that 21 appeal period, what, are we able to do permitting under the new adoptions, or are we best to wait until after the 21 days?
Well, that's when it kicks in. You're right. It kicks in at the select board hearing notice. And then you have it, I think it's a minimum of a month between your hearing and then the select board's hearing. So the earliest they could have it is sometime in May. But they
It's just-
actually have a whole year to consider it. And I know you don't want to wait that long, but I think that would be up to the select board when they actually wanted to invoke it. But as long as they're considering it and they don't officially adopt it, that is that overlap period. where in a sense, both regs are in effect. And that was done to keep developers from jumping the gun during the hearing process to get things in under the old rules.
Thank you, Sharon. I mean,
But-
I'd be inclined to give it to unless the select board objected. I'm sorry, Camilla, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. I just want to, the legal review piece.
Right.
The select board is a little bit confused. We barely touched on this at our last meeting, but the select board passed the draft on for legal review.
Right.
We got comments back. Now I don't know what to do with the comments, because in my opinion, my sense is, if you guys pass it to us and then we make changes based on those legal comments, then it has to come back to you again, right? So should
Well,
those
the planning commission has ability to comment on, you'd have to forward that to the planning commission. They have ability to weigh in on it, but it doesn't have to necessarily go back to the planning commission for another hearing. They
So
have
does it-
ability to weigh into the select board's review process during the
Okay.
hearing.
So does it make sense if we have some housekeeping on some things that need to be done, and you've got the housekeeping of the legal stuff? Would it make sense for us to get this to the select board and have them do that and just let us double check it when they're done?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that sound like an okay way to do it?
If Sharon's on board with it, that works for me. So you're saying, Ruth, that we would conclude our public hearing tonight, and really the legal
And-
comments are.
Plus the couple of things that I've got to have
Are
done.
these really
Yeah,
significant?
I guess that's the question. I don't know if you've had a chance to digest the legal comments
I
yet.
haven't been able to get into them. Devin looked at them. She said that they're statutory language kind of stuff that he says, you want to make sure that this agrees with that, but not,
There's-
They're not substantive, they're not changing anything.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there should instead of may? kind of
Yeah,
things?
probably things like that. I haven't
Oh,
seen
okay.
them yet
Okay,
myself, but that's the sense, is that they shouldn't be anything that really changes the.
Well, once you
Okay.
look at them,
Yeah.
couldn't you just pass them back to us? And if
That's-
they're not substantive, we'll just incorporate them as if they were formatting changes.
That's what we're trying to understand
I
is
think that makes sense.
it the select board?
but then we'd have to have another public hearing if we
Yeah.
change
If you make any
what we have to
We
do.
gotta,
But we're doing a boundary line adjustment that's not reflected in the
Well, it's,
draft.
but that's an amendment to what we currently have.
Well, that
So
would trigger another hearing.
Yeah.
it would, that's
So-
why I'm suggesting that it go with the legal stuff to the select board to keep moving it forward.
But that's
Then
a
if the
change.
select
You're
board
saying that
makes
it's
a
not in a
substantive-
format to pass the select board right now.
Correct. I don't have it this minute. I've got to get Central Vermont to do the remapping
Yeah.
for me.
So it sounds like we have to have another hearing anyway.
It's stuff you've already approved. It's nothing,
But if it's not done,
It's-
it's not
it's-
reflected anywhere in a
it's-
document.
it's not reflected in a document, but it's been
Yeah.
approved by both the planning commission and the select board.
Right, but if it's not reflected in the document, then how can the public be commenting on it?
Well, that's
They can-
where,
they can
that's
comment-
where,
they
if
can
it's with the
comment on
select
it
board,
at the select board
with the
hearing.
select board, with any of the statutory stuff,
Mhm.
that item. And was there something else, Sharon? What else did I mention today? It was basically just the map thing that I remember, other than possibly maybe some definitions, but I haven't had a chance to look at that.
Yeah, you mentioned there was one definition you thought needed to be carried forward that we missed.
Yeah, from the old one.
And again, the things like typos and section and stuff, those are technical changes that you can make anytime, even after they're adopted. That's just kind of a cleanup thing. As long as there's no substantive changes. So that could be done at any point, but I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, you could go both ways. The planning commission could actually you could work on those changes and work on the legal stuff through the planning commission. I'm not sure you have to have another public hearing. Because again, the purpose of this hearing is to take public comments and you can incorporate changes based on those too, and whatever you pass on to the select board. As long as it would be the one where the public would comment on the proposed changes, any proposed changes.
Select board meeting, so is where they would be able to comment on those changes and determine if it's substantive.
Well, I mean, I tend to think that
Speaking
at this
in
point,
turn.
it appears to me there's very, very little public interest in these anymore, and that we have accomplished our goal of having a public hearing at the planning
We've
commission level.
Exhausted the public. as well.
Well, we've exhausted the public and ourselves. So let's assume for the sake of argument that this is our public hearing at the planning commission. The next question then is what to do with the lawyer's proposed changes. Are those then a matter for the select board? Or, okay, go
Is
ahead.
there any reason why, is there any problem with that? If you pass on the draft you have, and then we review it, you know, and say we make whatever changes the attorney has suggested, we would do that before we would have our public hearing?
Yeah.
You'd
Right.
have to notice the planning commission, and I can send along the specifics, but I think it's 15 days before the hearing at minimum. The planning commission needs to get it to be able to provide comments at the select board's hearing or in
Yes, the way-
advance of it.
The way you guys had to do it with the select board for a report, basically, right?
Right, right.
So we would have to we would have to review what you send us. And review the legal comments and make any changes that we might suggest,
Right,
and then give it to you guys for your review before we set our public hearing.
correct.
And then, so those changes would happen before our public hearing, is what I'm
Correct.
getting at.
Mhm.
And then,
Yes.
but it wouldn't, and then we
Then,
don't have to.
then you don't have to do anything other than if somebody at your public hearing
Yeah.
brings up something.
Substantive and you
Right,
make a change
right,
there, then,
right.
then what happens? Just a,
Then you vote to, after you've had your public hearing, you vote whether to accept them or not.
right,
Unless
if
they're
we
making.
made
it-
a substantive change, I'm just putting this
Yeah,
out there.
right.
If we, then what would happen?
Then we'd probably have to
Then
come
we'd
back
have
to
to do it
us, we'd
again.
probably have to have another public
I don't
hearing.
think we'd have
15
to
days
another
of public
hearing,
hearing,
though, would we?
No,
No? Select board can make those changes without,
yeah.
But I.
Again, the
still have-
select board needs to notify the planning commission that they've made changes and give the planning commission the ability to comment on them.
okay.
There is a
So-
formal process for that.
So Sharon, what we talked about a year ago was that the select board can't promulgate laws, that they can only hand it to us as a comment, and then we incorporate it and then give it back to them to pass.
Well, ultimately, they have the final say on what's in them.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so once it's in the select board's hands, if they make any changes, those changes have to be forwarded back to the planning commission for comment. And the planning commission may or may not decide to comment at that point. But those comments go back to the select board as part of their hearing process and adoption process.
That makes sense, and I find it very unlikely to I mean, I can't really imagine we'd object to the select board incorporating legal comments from the town's
Right.
lawyer. I mean, that doesn't really make
I don't,
sense. Yeah,
anticipate us coming up with anything substantive, but I don't know what would come at a public hearing. We can't promise anything, but.
okay. And the timing, this timing issue, it sounds like it's kind of a non-issue. The select board can decide, you guys can talk among yourselves as to whether this idea of like a peak construction season
Oh, right,
is
yeah.
still an issue. I suspect, I mean, my gut, like, at the, during COVID, there was a huge amount of
Oh, yeah, 2
activity.
years ago, or more,
Yeah.
it was,
There, but
yeah.
it's quite quiet now, and like we said, construction goes on all year. I think that's the planning commission perspective.
Yep.
But ultimately, I think you guys
Right.
have to decide the timing that you're comfortable with.
And the kind of stuff that's coming in, at least in the last handful of months, is the kind of stuff that if it were to come in, it's gonna probably get a yes with both ordinances, if they wanted to.
Yeah, isn't there only one case that's a problem? Fail the old ones and pass the new. Other than that, right, I mean,
That's the only one.
fail
that-
old, fail new, whatever,
Right.
pass old, pass new, whatever, and
It's
then
either yes,
fail
yes, no,
old.
no, or
And pass
you're,
old.
you
and-
know, you
Pass
just,
old and fail new would be the issue.
yeah. And that, yeah, so I think that's doable.
So your changes that you were just talking about.
Yes.
that need to be
Those
done,
changes,
Can you guys vote tonight to pass it on, but then not pass it on until it has those changes in it, or?
well, the changes were approved by the PC and during, I know, our subcommittee. And what those changes are those boundary lines on the districts. Because I only recently got from Brandy the shape files to get to Central Vermont because Brian said he could do it for me. So,
I'm not
Okay.
questioning why.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
just questioning what
Anyways.
we do from a process.
and yeah, I mean, we can, reauthorize them tonight in a vote and pass it on to you? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I'm asking how
Yeah.
the select board can get them so that we are reviewing everything we want.
Well,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
actually looking at the statute, and after the planning commission has its hearing, you can do it either way. The planning commission can make the changes and then pass it on to the select board without having to have another hearing. So you could wait maybe till the next planning commission meeting and approve everything and pass them on. Or you can just vote whenever, or even tonight, to pass them on to the select board and let the select board make the changes. If they do the changes, they'd have to go back to the planning commission and note the changes within 15 days prior to their public hearing to give the planning commission the opportunity to respond to them.
We're probably gonna do it anyway, well, because of the legal. We know we're gonna have comments that we're gonna.
But if
pass it
we-
back to you anyway.
So it sounds like we should pass them on to you then.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
otherwise we'd have to have another hearing.
No,
No.
I think she just said you.
No.
Not enough.
We have to have another hearing, but we have to postpone it 15 more days.
No,
I mean,
No, we'd have
this
to.
this
we'd
is
have to
becoming
vote on
something
our
like
plan.
out of Franz Kafka now. It
So
really
we're
is.
just voting on it to pass on to them, in other words, because we've had our hearing. Is that how I?
Yes, it's word.
Right.
Yes, we satisfied our
Okay.
hearing requirement,
Okay, so we're
and then we
passing it
have
on to them.
either a choice of voting on the changes
Mhm.
that have come up at our next meeting, or just saying,
Okay,
we're
okay,
passing them on, we understand their changes are coming,
okay,
tell us what changes you make,
okay.
and, and then we'll tell you if we have concerns. I get that.
Yeah, and on the select board end of it, a second hearing kicks in if you have a larger population, if your population's over 2,500, or if the select board makes changes after their first public hearing, then they'd have to have another public hearing. But the planning commission does not have to have another public hearing.
Yeah, nor do I think one is really warranted, because the public is not here. I mean, I think they've been very well informed and involved, and at some point,
They're here in spirit.
move on. In that case, I think I'd entertain, can I have a motion to pass the looters on to the select boards? Oh, I see a motion from Jim. Is there a second from anyone?
I have a question. So do we have a list of the zoning district corrections? Like, where does that live?
I'm not sure this is following Robert's Rules of Order, but I don't have them in front of me. We have a motion.
Yeah,
Okay,
you have
we-
to have a
Need a
second
second
before we
and then
have
discussion.
discussion,
We need a second and then
before
discussion.
discussion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all right. Are there any items for discussion? Jenny Felice?
Yes, do we have a
Do we
list
have
of
it
the-
written?
Yeah.
We probably have it in the minutes somewhere.
How is it gonna be accomplished if there's not a summary of what we voted on for the, like, I have Burling parcel, I think I have Harvey. What are the corrections that are being made to the maps?
I think Burling and Harvey are the same.
What are
And
we doing with,
what are you
okay,
talking,
the ones that I'm aware of?
Yes.
That one I'm a little gray on. Was the, change in the zoning district up here at the top of where it says, resource protection, for it to be rural, up at the top of, drawing a blank, off of Golf Course Road, up to the top,
Farms, that's
the farms, thank you,
Yeah,
past the
Reynolds
farms.
is-
And it was including Reynolds lot and the one next to him in there that we agreed to. There's that one,
Mhm.
and then there's the one for Mary Gal.
Yeah,
that we
it's you.
agreed to.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The
So
Berlin
not
one, I'm not
Berlin.
sure what we need on Berlin.
I just had a note that I think one of the daughters had an issue with how the parcels were set out. Like, I don't know,
Okay.
I'm just looking through my notes to try to
Okay,
figure out what.
that rings a bell
corrections.
to me, but I need to know
Yeah.
what
Then-
specifically.
Harvey also came in with a request for their,
Well, that would be Alex Harvey,
Yeah,
who is her
Alex Harvey
daughter.
Burl-
okay,
yeah,
so it's the
That's
same person.
Berlin. Yes, the
Yeah.
same person. I just need to know, I'm not clear on what exactly needs to be corrected
What the
there.
request was.
Yeah.
We gotta keep in mind too, that we are passing this enormous piece of legislation or whatever we call it. And that thing can be amended or added to or changed, the day after it's implemented.
And I considered that in talking to
Yeah.
Sharon, because I said to her, that was my original thought, Jim, knowing how you feel. I figured we can do this, 2 weeks after everything's said and done.
That's right.
And maybe we'll have other things, but she was suggesting you may have time here between now and the select board and them having their meeting to be able to get it done now. So it's up to you guys. I can go either way. I have to find out from Brian how quickly he
I think
can
we need
do
to
it.
include those changes that we told
Said
those
we-
people
said
we
we were
would be
gonna make.
making.
Yeah.
So we
Yes,
can't be
thank you.
putting out,
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
well,
things that
that's,
do not include those changes.
I agree.
There's definitely a way for us to figure out when that happened and check the minutes of meetings because
I mean, I know what they are and I know what, with Mary Gow, it was 1,250 feet up from the bottom boundary line. And when I talked to Brian, he said, yes, he could do that.
Didn't those discussions happen at the select board?
They may have us also at the select board, but they
I don't
also,
remember which-
they-
Some mapping discussions happened at the PC,
yeah,
but then I think there were a handful that happened later at the select board.
I'm
I think the ones we're talking about were at the select board.
I'm just trying to think back where that was decided.
I think they were decided. at
But I think the
select board
PC was still-
after-
part of it.
Cause I think these were
When
people who
we were
came in a little
yeah.
bit later and said, and pointed out there were still some issues.
Probably,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I think they came, that, I still think this group was aware of them though.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
just
okay.
thinking minutes, what
Right.
minutes are we looking for,
yeah.
what select board and what year? I'll go back
Which decade?
to my notes.
I think you'll also find it in the subcommittee, the beginning of the subcommittee meetings.
okay, is there any further discussion on this topic?
Can you, so the Alpine Village parcel? Is that one of the Gow or,
That one, the one that was in Alpine Village was the one of Virginia Ross,
yeah,
and that got done
that's.
on the
that.
map,
Yeah.
on the
Okay.
final map.
Okay.
On the final map, that one's on here.
Awesome, okay.
I showed it to Maria. And I think Virginia saw it before she died.
Okay, I mean, I do have other questions, but it's only because I haven't been following up on my, on the status. It's been a long time. Can I just ask the height waiver that we were dealing with, did that get back in there?
in the resource protection zone? Or
It was,
Overall.
it was
Yes,
for, it was for
overall.
the South View
We did,
property.
Yeah, Up to 35 feet with a waiver?
With the waiver.
Yeah, that's in
Yes.
there.
we found it in another, we thought that it wasn't called out, and then we found it in a
That
different
was
spot.
moved and it
Yeah,
is.
I think, yeah.
It's in
that's
there.
right.
It's in
I
there.
just, I
Yeah.
saw it
Yeah.
yesterday.
And I think they didn't, from what I understand, I think we did it in such a way that it wasn't, yeah, yes, it was in there, right? But they had to
Yeah,
give,
the height section was changed to include that, and also the fact that under state statute, you have to allow an extra floor for affordable housing if they go for the density bonus. So to
Right.
accommodate density bonuses.
yeah, because we talked about this when you were with us,
Yeah.
or in the subcommittees.
And then the lot coverage percentage, I think we talked about that for a while.
Remind me.
Just what percentage of a lot could be developed, of the total size of the lot? So I think it was disproportionate if you already had a 1 acre lot. Sharon, do you remember that discussion?
No, I know there's stuff in there about building envelopes that we looked at, but one of the changes I do remember is the allowing for 2 accessory dwelling units on a lot, which
Yeah.
the state doesn't require, but the subcommittee, I think because the planning commission is interested in housing, added that in.
I thought that was with a duplex, right? That you have
Yeah,
two.
with a single family or, yeah, with a duplex, you can have up to 2 accessory dwelling units on the lot. And I also just want to mention quickly that a lot of a lot of what I was working on were the statutory changes over the last couple of years that you mentioned, because there's such a focus on housing now. And it was interesting though, because Warren's one of the few communities that has municipal sewer, but not municipal water. So technically, you don't have to meet those requirements, but I think the decision was made to go ahead and allow for the densities because really sewer is a limiting factor. And you all have capacity to accommodate more housing. So we did adjust those a bit from what Brandy had done, although it was pretty generous under your initial draft, but we adjusted those to make sure they were consistent with what the state was also trying to do.
Yeah,
Was it percent?
yeah, we
In the
had, there's an
dimensional
actual
standards?
percentage in there.
Is it in the dimensional standards? Is that where, or was it one of the points in each district? As-
don't
There
even know,
are
but
lot coverage requirements. I think, I'm not sure they changed them. I don't remember.
I'm not recalling that one.
I feel a little, well, let's see. I think these are all legit questions, Jenny. I'm just wondering if now's what's the right, would it make sense to just have you,
Still in
Lot
discussion before you.
Okay.
vote on them, so.
I mean, there's certainly mention of lot coverage requirements per zoning district. So it's something in each zoning district when you're looking at a specific zoning district, where we did have percentages, and I was just wondering where we came out on, from the first draft to the second that we're passing, if anyone recollects. If we, I guess, loosen the coverage, because I thought it was something we were talking about, just to refresh,
Don't specifically.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
2 things. One is lot coverage and the other are the size of building envelopes. And I honestly don't think we changed those, but I'll go back and check to make sure.
Yeah. It might have just been a personal note of mine to. I think I had looked at it for how it would impact the minimum lot sizes that already exist. And like right now, for example, in rural, you can do 5% or 4,000 square feet, whichever is greater. But yeah, I don't think I have an opinion on that. I just wanted to kind of close the loop on an open bullet point I had. And another bullet point was telecom. We were slightly concerned that the draft that we had done took away the protections that we had in the standalone bylaw. Do you remember where that came out?
I think we spent a lot of time talking about the telecom and Sharon made made adjustments to comport the draft we received from the cell, essentially, I would say the cell tower opponent group, to make sure that accorded, we essentially accepted that, but modified it to
Yeah.
fit.
We did take a lot of those comments and incorporate them.
Yeah.
and make adjustments.
Yes, it's, the biggest thing I would say is that cell towers are conditional use and, rather than being a permitted use in a bunch. and we took a
Yeah, we
bunch-
did, they were permitted in some, and that was one of their concerns, and we
Yes,
changed
and
that.
we changed that.
Yeah.
Right,
And there was that visual impact standards
Right.
that we incorporated from them. So,
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad you, yes,
Yeah.
that's, thank you for just reviewing that so that I just have my head around the four bullet points that I was,
no, that's great. Thank you for bringing those up, and sorry if I was.
so I think you did it.
Okay, so then, are there any other comments or questions? No. If that's the case, we have a motion to pass this on to the select board. We have a second to pass this on to the select board. So then I would request a vote, all in favor of passing on the draft looters to the select board. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any abstentions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Woo!
oh, congratulations.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Yeah. All right. What else is on our agenda for tonight?
Thank you, guys.
Nothing.
We have review and approved previous minutes. We can do that. Has everyone had a chance to look at our previous minutes? Camilla, are you leaving?
No, we have the restroom.
Okay, when you come back, I'd love to talk about Town Garage. If that is. Thank you.
Nathan,
Let's take a minute,
can
look
you
at
get
our,
this on my screen? It won't open up the way it's on there. And I'm gonna need that bigger screen.
It's the screens and stuff here.
Not many moments.
Can you not touch the mouse?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Do you have to X out that dialog box maybe first? Okay.
okay, I'm assuming everyone's had a chance now to review our previous minutes, the minutes of March 24th, 2025. Do I have a motion to, well, does anyone have any changes? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Awesome. Just making for your information, the priorities we discussed
Yeah,
are on those minutes.
yeah, and I read through them. It looks great. Just trying to see if there's anything I put some,
Really great presentation by Jim Pratt. So,
yeah.
that was really
Yeah, you missed that. and That was really excellent.
I think it's great.
Well, just as a follow-up, Jim, I get an hour of Brian Voigt's time to add that to our GIS. So we're gonna be able to look at that visually.
Oh, good.
So,
That will be
yeah,
excellent.
so, no, he said it'll
Seeing
take an
that-
hour.
Seeing a visual
That'll
of
be
that,
super
of
cool.
your thing would be super cool.
Well, it'll be cool. So we'll get
Awesome.
Brian Voigt, I talked to him a couple times last
Cool.
week to figure out how to pull that into his GIS view. So we can do that.
Cool.
Is the recording of that gonna be on the TV?
Yes,
Mad River TV?
yeah, I always send my
Okay, so
thing
the-
to, yes.
Okay, it just that
absolutely.
wasn't up there the other day. This is okay. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but Buckminster Fuller did one of the United States
You were talking
where there
about
was a
previous
dot
meeting?
per million people,
Yeah.
and it was over time.
And then you watched it
You watched it.
come out of
wa-
Philadelphia,
you
New
watched
York,
it
and just
go.
go.
And it was, I mean, if we could do it over time, it would be really amazing, but just doing it, the period is great.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah.
because all those are labeled by year. There's no reason that you can't do it.
I
by
mean,
time.
that's a powerful visual of how this town is
I
developing.
can send it directly to you. if you
Is it
want
like
me.
transfer data?
No, it's that data right there. It is not digitized.
Oh, wow. Okay. Confirmed it. Cool.
He was
Yeah.
my compadre for many mornings,
Wow.
Okay.
but I can
So
send
the
that directly
next,
to you.
the next,
That'd be great. Thanks.
the next item on the agenda is new or other business.
So Dan, I have one thing, so I'm gonna
Please.
give you guys two updates. The TAC update, I attended the TAC meeting.
Which stands for
Transportation
trans-
Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
That's a blast.
Yeah. it is. You got pizza?
So we went through the CV rail plan,
Oh, yeah. mhm.
which is
Yeah.
actually kind of interesting.
Yeah.
However, doesn't really apply to Warren. We don't have any
Yeah.
railroads. And then the next one was the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, and that is overwhelming for me
Yeah.
because it is a bunch of
That's it.
experts that have been in it for the last 20 years, talking the nits and,
Mhm.
so anyway, that's gonna take me a little bit of time
Yeah,
to
it does.
slowly
Of course.
work my way
Yeah.
into,
Took
but
me about a year to get.
we're talking about, land use map updates from a regional point of view, I don't know how they affect us, but I'll just give everybody fair warning, I'm, that is gonna take me,
Understood. Big picture, the state, has designated these regional planning districts.
yeah,
And then our town plan fits under, and it must be consistent
with.
with the
with-
region.
Yeah, we had to get it approved, actually. Yeah, Ruth and I went up to the headquarters.
We went to the wrong place the first time.
Yeah.
And yes, they actually
Then
bless
we went
our
to the
town
right
plan.
place afterwards, which was the
Yes, we did.
brewery.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're operating, in
Yeah.
some ways, they monitor and we operate under their overall plan. Of course, we have some autonomy, but we've got to be consistent with what they do. And some of what they do really affects
I
us.
was very
Yeah.
surprised how much I call it mid-band control there is around what we're actually doing. I was very surprised. That was an eye opener as
Yeah.
far as level of IRP between us and kind of the legislature. So anyway, interesting. It's gonna take me, that's not something I'm gonna,
Just grateful that you're doing that. Thank
Exactly,
you.
really
No problem.
appreciate it.
but,
You'll learn a lot.
well, we'll see.
See if they keep his
That's
attention.
optimistic.
We have to see if they keep his attention, is what
Yeah,
it
right.
comes down to.
Fair enough.
Okay, that's all I had, those
Okay.
two updates, and we have, Energy Committee has not met again yet. But I will get plugged into that. And the one thing that I had there, the only thing we really had going on there was, we're gonna put solar panels on the DeFreeze farms. That was the one thing that I kind of took away from, we're gonna put solar panels on the DeFreeze farms. And that was kind of like
Like
the
make a
next thing.
proposal?
Like barn.
Yeah,
Propose that to the DeFreeze?
I couldn't tell whether Lexi had taken that to the next step or not, but that was the one thing I took out of it. I said, that's a pretty cool idea.
On the
actually."
roofs or the freestanding ones?
On the.
Hopefully roofs.
Yeah, I
On the
think the
roof.
freestanding
Yeah.
ones.
No, these would go grab their big barns and put, TVs on their barns.
And the only concern is probably fire, what happens when there's a fire. But otherwise, it's. a great-
Yeah, no, and so anyway, that's the only thing I have for.
The solar installation guys in our own fire department have regulations about how the panels go on them and everything else.
They had a meeting and all that.
Good, okay, so that's not. an issue.
That
The
was,
structural integrity of the barn is one thing.
There's a new one. It's a brand new barn.
The brand new one, the big one.
yeah, so it was.
But was it designed to take?
I think the DeFreeze are the big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell whether or not this
Yeah.
was a collaboration or whether it was just
Have you been able
just
to
an
talk to
idea.
Lexi at all, or?
I have not. We tried to touch base and then we never really,
Okay.
but But yeah, no, I'll follow up on that. I actually thought that was pretty cool.
At the MRVPD, I think I mentioned there were changes. Our current chair, Brian Shoup, is stepping off his chair because he's not chair of the Waitsfield Select Board, and that's too much. With all that's going on there, so that's a little bit unfortunate because Brian was an excellent chair. And changes at the select, after what's happened at the MRVPD is quite interesting because for years a very, like Jared Cadwell and Bob Ackland were there and omnipresent. Jim had been on that also for decades before, and there's been a lot of turnover recently. One of which will be me next year. So I think there's a little bit of feeling of, where's the next generation of leadership, coming up. So I think the loss, losing Brian as chair is, I think is a loss because he was actually the first person. Before there was Joshua,
Yeah.
Brian was the
He was
first
the
person in
ED.
that role. Yeah.
Actually, he was I think he was the second or third
Oh.
ED.
Okay.
Is this
Yeah,
supposed to
Joanna
ask how
Whitcomb-
the Warren
Joanna
Select
Whitcomb
Board
was, Jeff
position?
Squires was an ED there. There was a lot of people.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing.
Yeah, how are you guys doing in terms of expressed interest in?
Well,
the-
is he finished with
I do, but I really want to talk about the town, if you think it's appropriate and supporting, the bond vote on the garage is going to be a huge issue. And, I've committed to do some things for select board, which I haven't delivered yet, which are like an FAQ, like we did for the cell tower and for our looters and for a one pager. We're having another
I
meeting
was just
potentially
gonna
this
say,
week?
this Thursday, Jim and you and Devin and myself, Rebecca won't be here, but, are, I think, meeting to talk about to follow up on the meeting that we had with Josh Schwartz, when he gave us sort of the background on what they did leading up to their bond vote. And so we need to sit down and kind of make our plan for public outreach, education, information, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure we have much to share at this point,
Okay,
but
but coming out of that,
That would be really good if you came to that meeting.
I'll be
Yeah,
there
sure.
with Doug. And then after that, because I'd like to get other folks involved who've expressed
yeah, once we
interest.
know what we
Okay,
need
so
done. then
after
I-
that-
Thursday at 2:30.
Okay,
You're
so
gonna
after
do
that
that here? I
meeting,
think Becky told me you're gonna do it here.
I just said somewhere in the building, we'll
Okay,
see
okay.
whatever space is
Right.
available.
okay. One of the messages from Joshua was, it's incumbent on us as town leadership. I mean, of course, it's mostly the select board and the driving seat, but we've all got to pitch in basically.
Well, and the last time I was here, I think I said, yeah, I could want some resources, so, once we have a sense of what those pieces are, then anybody on the planning commission who wants to help us would be great.
Who was the last bond vote for Warren?
What was it?
Yeah, like-
Solar panels, like the school?
Okay, how long ago was that? And like, what, I wasn't
Yeah,
here then, so what did you
yeah.
learn from that?
I'm gonna say it was probably 10 years ago,
Yeah.
Ooh, I
That's what I
think,
would
I
say.
wanna say a little
More
longer
than
than that,
10 or
yeah.
12, maybe.
I mean, I
Yeah.
started here in 2005 and it was somewhere between 2005 and maybe 2010 or 12, somewhere in there.
So was that one,
I
15
think it
years?
was, I think it was maybe 12.
Oh, okay, all right,
That's-
okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
And that
Yes.
turned out to be a great project, it seems like,
yeah, there's still mixed opinion on that.
Oh,
but
really?
I think the majority of the town thinks it's a good project, yeah. Yeah, that was the last one. There are two other, bonds that are actually being retired this coming year, and that in 2025 and 2026 actually were due and retiring a couple of other previous bonds. One's fire pond, maybe wastewater? Maybe it's wastewater.
It's been 20 years. Isn't that long?
So where did we get the money to loan Wheeler Brook? Is that a
Oh,
bond?
I don't understand. No, that was not a bond.
That was not a bond, but somehow we
Yeah.
said, we'll loan you some money.
When he did a report, somebody from there did a
I wonder.
report at a select board meeting recently, and I had no idea that the town, what our role had been in that, so. Don't fully understand. So
That's probably a complicated one. Those
it's very complicated.
those tax credits and all sorts and
And flows
specialist,
through us, kind of, yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, so on the town branch, that's.
Okay,
I think-
perfect. All right, so we'll be back after that meeting and asking for help, basically, for kind of community
yeah.
leaders who can help push
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Video stuff, materials. stuff.
You know, I think that like one of the things just coming out of the town meeting that just was not clear as someone who's kind of an arm's length is just the access to this, like the story we're telling about like
Yeah.
the conflict, right? Because it really felt like a lot of the discussion around the garage was about the manner in which the property was being acquired or used. And so I just felt like that wasn't resolved, and it wasn't the place to resolve it in the town
Yeah,
meeting. But
Yeah.
as I think we go to try to let people know about it, that's like the one area I feel like I can't speak to. If someone
Yeah.
asks me like, oh, well, how'd you figure out a place for it to go? It's like, well, we just kind of found a place that did eminent domain or something and it's okay, or we can't, I think
part
as
of
y'all
the
are developing
part of
that,
the
that's gonna be an
FAQs,
important thing to
yeah.
have.
So expanding a little bit on how did we choose this location?
Yeah.
And what are the other places we
No,
looked at? and that
the, specifically, the previous select board's agreement with her.
Yeah.
Was that the piece?
That-
Yeah, because I've talked to
That's-
some people and it's like, oh, well, I heard that like, there's a bad
Right.
deal there.
Right.
And it just felt like a bunch of the people in the town meeting, like, people I don't really hang out with, like older people. But the vibe was a little bit more just like, this is a bad deal. We don't want to do this to someone.
There were a couple of
And
voices.
I don't know how significant that is again, but it's just something I didn't really have in my
Yeah,
head a good answer on.
yeah.
Well, we'll try to put that in that FAQ,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
And Joshua's message
And
to,
simplify it.
and simplify it.
Yeah.
And Joshua's message was
Always
very
better.
much, I think it's what we've heard before, which is explain the why we're doing
Right,
this.
right.
Why, and make an emotional appeal. Like this is for the safety and health of our
The
village and
overarching
for,
why.
yeah, the overarching why. So hopefully, I mean, that's part of, that's exactly what you're saying is a key part of our job. Articulating the why this is such an important project and
And then
within
how
that,
the-
why the site, what did we do, blah, blah, blah.
And then
So-
keeping all that information updated on a regular basis.
Do you have I mean, obviously we have somewhere, but the legal opinions from the lawyers and
Yes,
Who-
the select
you-
board
you
does
have
have that.
Because we own the land, Macon. It's not an eminent domain thing, because we do own that property.
Make it mistake that. We didn't have to take. it.
Right.
Okay, so we'll be rolling out, requests for help basically, and a
Yes.
plan, and a communication plan. Shortly. Because we do have to tell the story, or, it's on us to tell the story. It's ours to
And be
get
able to answer questions.
And answer
that
questions.
come.
skeptics. If that covers the town garage topic,
Is everybody else up to speed on where we are on the project as far as task force interviewed two construction companies that had applied for the construction manager position? We did that 2 weeks ago. Came up with a recommendation to the select board for one of them. I would say, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but both of the interviews, both of the groups that we interviewed were really, really good. I mean, it was very close. I think I would have been comfortable with either one.
One was $100,000 cheaper than the
Yeah,
other.
and that's what we.
So we
was
decided to go
recommended.
with a less expensive one.
And the select board
Wait, you
did
know how that works though?
agree to hire.
Yeah, I know.
Taking the lowest bid.
No, they weren't the lowest bid.
Amount, or was it per year?
They were
They
not
went the lowest bid.
of all the
Okay.
originals, it was just of those two, they ended up being, yeah. So the select board did agree to contract with Re-Arc out of Williston.
Were you familiar with them at all, Jim?
What's that?
Were you familiar with them at all?
No, actually, I was familiar with the other group.
Yeah, but you liked what this guy had to say?
I'll have to say, first of all, as an architect, the guys that we hired to do the architectural work
Yeah.
on it have been phenomenal.
Right, you've said that all along.
Really, really good. And they recommended that we go the direction of a construction manager, which has lots of different advantages. It's a guy who works for us and he puts the various parts of it out to bid. So it's a good way of getting a complicated project done less expensively than bidding the whole thing out to construction companies.
Okay,
So us bidding it out to construction companies. So he recommended that. He put out an RFP, which we looked at. It was really good. He got 4 responses, right all the way across the board. 4 very capable companies. He said he'd be comfortable working with any of them. We looked over their qualifications and their submittals, and we came up with 2 that we thought we'd like to interview. We got those guys in, and they were both eminently qualified to do the job. Both felt like they knew Warren, they understood what we were trying to do, and it was a hard decision to make, like Camilla says, but we went with, since they were both very similar, we went with the one that we didn't feel it was any way less qualified,
right.
just was cheaper.
And as Devin pointed out, also, they were the ones whose site super.
Oh, yeah, their site superintendent lives on the Brook Road.
So somebody who's really, aware of our
Okay,
community.
Yeah.
And
And not only
was
that,
another tipping point.
That's true, that's true. I mean, can't remember what I was gonna say.
Okay, well, good. Thank you
Cool,
for that.
thank you. Then there were questions about select board composition or interviews or seats.
Yeah, just as anyone expressed interest in filling any of the seats that are wide.
Yeah, we had a candidates forum at our last select board meeting, last Tuesday. We had 4 submittals and then 1, retracted before the forum. So we had an open question session with those 3 at our select board meeting Tuesday. And we felt that we were not in a rush to commit to any filling those positions at the moment. Since then, we've had another individual who was at that meeting, but didn't realize that it was what the level that we were at, has sent in a letter of interest, so we will have to interview them as well. And I have somebody else that I'm speaking to. So we do have people who are interested and qualified, and
You're currently at 3 and you want to fill 3,
Bill
2
too.
are,
fill 2.
it's 5 total.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent, great that there's interest.
Yeah,
Good.
I think we'll be in a good position. to
Yeah,
fill the
Jim,
seats.
both Jim and I were at the meeting,
Yeah, that's right.
and it was good. It was good to hear the select board had pretty good questions to ask everybody, and it was good to hear the responses.
Next meeting's tomorrow?
No,
Next meeting will be next Tuesday, the
Next
27th.
Tuesday. Okay.
Any other business?
I don't know the candidates long will happen there. We have a pretty packed agenda.
I was just gonna throw out one thing, which is just a fun thing. My son's 12-year-old baseball coach is running practices for the Little League at the Warren School. So I know there's the adult softball league does that sometimes, but it's cool to see. So we're usually a couples field, but he's trying to make it work here.
Nice.
It's just good to see more and more of that, because the Little League's growing and we're always looking for fields, and I always wondered why, but I think we're starting to cleave off and have kind of a North Moortown kind of thing, southern thing. So
That's good.
if you see some kids out there playing ball, that's why.
great.
It's a great place for Warren to have.
I agree.
I
It's a
mean,
great
when you-
public space.
When you're driving down Route 100 at night in the summer and you see the
See the
lights
lights.
on up there, I
Yeah,
think
that's-
it
that
really
is cool.
feels good that that place is so actively used. There's people playing tennis and skateboarding and doing their dogs and playing softball and all those things is really pretty cool.
It was also really cool for me, just a couple times in the last week. I have been up in the office and looked down and seen kids tossing the ball back and forth here on the green, which is just really nice to see.
Yeah.
That's what it should be used for.
Let's get that gazebo up. Where the hell is that?
I'll thank y'all in advance when my son puts a baseball through one of the windows
Oh,
down
and
there.
a Warren version of the Roundup. Who's gonna?
Yeah, you got that.
Congratulations, that sounds great.
Who's got a lot of
Steal their
friends?
name.
That's
No,
right.
I can't steal the name.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was my one fun one, then one.
Why, you still a name? Warren Roundup?
No, I think that they
Pretty
like,
good.
I don't know, I know that the
They're
guy
not even
who,
doing the Roundup.
they like sold the name, like I
John.
really don't think we can use it.
No,
John-
we
John
want something
Serena?
completely unique.
It's
Yeah.
it's a
really nice.
description of an activity.
All right, I'll work on a name,
Wind
Yeah.
down?
and then maybe I can.
Yeah,
But I want to
Wrangle
ask
some
Macon
folks.
Yeah,
after
you need to find
hearing
people with
all
friends,
what
so
you're
don't look.
you
for-
wanted fly paper or something like, whatever.
I was thinking wind down. It's like the
Wind
opposite of
down.
round.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's an excellent
So my
idea.
other one,
Warren
is-
Wyndham, you got the alliteration of
Warren
WW.
wind down.
Go ahead, Megan.
yeah, my other one, and I'm
So
not
you're on
sure,
the team.
it's
Yeah.
kind
Megan
of
has the floor.
instead of like planning ahead, it's just given right now the impact on the park service. There's been a lot of cuts. I know that Warren Falls is always an issue, and I just didn't know if y'all were tracking it or someone's thinking about like what happens if there's like a fourth of the people to manage it as there have been in the past and
It's
stuff.
usually the fire department that manages it, isn't it?
No,
No, it's not, it's not.
It's a federal, I mean, it's a park
Yeah,
service
it's a
thing.
national
Yeah.
service.
Oh, I thought you just
Or-
meant
I just didn't know if like they
Traffic
shrink
or
so
something.
much out of Rutland, it's like there's gonna be like one dude that comes up every few days
Well,
and
they-
like, what
yeah.
happens?
Yeah,
You
a
know?
month or so ago, it was when Rebecca said that she spoke to him and yeah, Chris Matron,
So
he said.
just something to
"Yes,
think about, because that'll just be,
may
I
not-
mean,
may
we're still
not-
gonna
it
get
may
the
not
tourists.
It may not
I mean, they'll just close the parking lot.
possibly, that was what. he said.
Sound
They said the same thing about
Time to
Blueberry Lake.
start towing cars off the
Maybe
highway.
not. I mean, I don't know.
Something about what, James?
I'm sure,
But there's
because
no-
then
there's no
we're
gate-
gonna
there's no
wanna
gate
put
at
some
Blueberry Lake.
porta potties up there if they choose not to put theirs up there.
Right,
Is Blueberry Lake federal too?
Yeah,
national.
Yeah.
national
Oh,
forest.
man.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So in terms of cleanup, I think that the chamber has that stewarded program, right? That pick up trash.
Yeah.
But you're talking about other issues more than just trash.
Look, if there's a chance that Blueberry Lake could close for this, like,
I don't know how it can close.
okay.
No, they can't close it. What'll happen is people will start using jet skis on it. People will start camping there overnight. People will start, taking a dump all over the place,
Well, it's
it'll-
America.
You can call state troopers for that kind of stuff.
What's
Can't
that?
you- can't you call state police for that kind of
I'm
stuff?
not sure
Rip
you
my
can.
snowmobile over.
I'm not sure you
I saw a
can.
trooper there last year, I don't know what he was up to, but he stopped by.
Oh, there's
It's a good
regularly, there's
question.
two
We usually
foresters
have a
that go
visit
by.
from Chris
and
Yeah.
Go up there and check
around this
Blueberry Lake.
time
Yeah.
every year, so that's a good
I
point.
don't
Maybe
know.
I will ask if we can get him on the schedule to come in and give us a
Update.
Excellent,
sense of-
excellent question.
yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other business before we conclude this meeting? No, then I'd have,
Well, no,
sorry.
you and I have something to report, and that is the fact that we, the village, helped get us the application in for a municipal planning grant for you guys.
Yes, we did,
Yes.
but we don't know if we've.
No,
gotten
we
it
haven't
yet.
heard, we haven't gotten it yet, but
Maybe.
hopefully we will, so that we'll have some additional funding and the support as far as updating our town plan.
That's great.
Fingers crossed.
And it was like a village, it takes a village to raise a child, it took a village to get this in, and I appreciate everybody who helped.
You're very welcome. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. We have a
I'll
second.
second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, folks.
Did you want to pass the minutes or did I miss that?
We
Have to pass the minutes.
Yay. Oh, yeah, we passed the minutes.
Like the same.
Oh, it was-